Welcome everybody. My name's Brian Fretwell, and this is Bree Zoller. We're who the hell are we?
We're finding good.
Yeah, I'm the founder of Finding Good, and Bree here is my partner. She runs the operations and helps with building a lot of what we're going to discuss today, right? Like the outlines. Yeah, and maybe we'll kind of jump. So, we're doing this kind of informally, just to maybe bring people up to speed. We create an outline of the week. By we, Bree, you do the line work on the outside outline of the week.
And
but,
you put your stamp of approval on
that's
it.
right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, fair. But each week we come up with a question that our members use to help somebody else see their own value, right? And we do this with 4 different levels of connection. There's a bunch of science methodology behind it. But recently, we realized that we really enjoy talking about the science behind it. And the question of the week, each week, Bree goes and tracks down articles and science journals and that sort of thing. And we thought it would be fun. Now we're doing it on a live stream, but we'll record this, put it on YouTube, and we'll see where we go from here in terms of where we'll record it, that sort of thing. But we just thought it'd be fun to bring you all into the conversation of the science behind the methodology, but the science behind the question of the week. And each week has a different question. So there's, of course, some different science. And we're just going to have a discussion, share some of that science, share the question and what the question is designed to do, where you can use it, some of our experiences. And yeah. So if you like it, let us know. If you want to, if there's things you want us to talk about on here, that's great. But quite frankly, this is just you and I's opportunity to be able to nerd out for about half hour. So
Yes.
fair.
Let's do it.
All right, so let's jump into so Bree, as is so too common. Like I just start talking. Bree, tell me about when you and I kind of first came up with the idea. Like what are you excited to talk about on these? Especially, you create the outlines every week. So maybe what do you enjoy about creating the outlines, number one, but number two, then what are you maybe looking forward to chatting about when we share some of this with folks?
Yeah. And I think this is actually I can answer both questions with one response, believe it or not. What gets me excited about these questions is I get to look at these through a perspective of how can I help someone help someone? So we're going through and we've got, our question of the week this week, and I'll share it with the folks who might be watching right now. What's a challenge you overcame in the last month is our question of the week. And what I love looking at that question in particular is, okay, how can I help someone? Ask that question to someone else, and then take all of the understanding of why that question is beneficial, what they're looking for, what's some useful information to them to help them walk down that path, to help ultimately make this other person more resilient and to recognize the value in themselves. So that's what makes me excited about building these questions, but then also getting to share the questions with the world and that there's some really cool science behind it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think if there's anything that's been really exciting and surprising over developing this over the last 2 or 3 years, it's just how important it is. There's a lot of that self-help out there that talks about seeing your own value, and that's important. And then there's skills we need to develop. But I think what I'm surprised with every week is how much almost faster it happens when we do that in groups, and how much benefit you can provide somebody else by simply listening and knowing how to ask questions that help someone see their value, right? And how good it feels when you do it, number one. But then number two, the indirect effect it has on how you see your own value, right? Because I know I struggled for a lot of years professionally of really this question of like, am I doing anything that matters, right? Do I have value in this, this day-to-day thing I'm doing? And I know on our calls, but also in the calls I have with my own friends using this technique, that question gets answered more consistently. Like, yeah, I was able to, ask this person about an experience that they might not have otherwise had the opportunity to share, right? Because there's just so few ways, so few avenues for us to be able to talk about the things we're proud about, the things that we're good at. And quite frankly, it's uncomfortable. And so maybe that's the reason I like the other part of this. It's like I just get to make people uncomfortable all the time, but in a way that's like really helpful and beneficial for them. So
Well, and I love how that ties in with the question of the week of what
right.
challenge you overcame in the last month.
Mm.
Because it is, developing resilience, developing skills that requires you to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. So
You
maybe,
you
so
have to
should
get
I,
out a little bit.
so should we, let's do, I'm going to do a screen share here so that people can see. So what I'm about to share for those watching, and if you're listening, I imagine there'll be some people that do that depending on what we do with this. We're putting up what we call our question of the week outline, and they outline, actually, Bree, walk us through the outline here, because you're the one that puts this together each and every week. So yeah, just
Absolutely.
walk everybody through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so just at a high level overview of what the outline looks like. So first we have our question of the week that's listed at the top. And that is, what's a challenge you overcame in the last month, is our question of the week that we're working on. And right underneath that section, we have benefits in science. So that's where I go and look for great articles from incredibly smart people who have some great things to share with the world about how the brain works. So I include some great, from here, I've got a Mayo Clinic article that we reference talking about resilience and how addressing challenges helps us build our resilience.
Yeah.
Go
Keep going. Sorry, I'm already trying to start in the conversation, but like continue
right?
on the outline. Sorry.
You want to jump in.
Yeah.
And then underneath our benefits in science, we talk about the good that you might find. So as the question asker, what's some of the good that you might find in the person that you're talking to? So for this, we have different layers of this. So I'll start at the top layer of identifying a challenge that they overcame. That's the base layer of just having that first level conversation of what is that challenge that they overcame. The next layer that you can get to is articulating how they felt or experienced that moment. So understanding, like, was it uncomfortable for them? Did they feel good afterwards? What were the emotions that they were going through? Our next layer that we get to is recognizing their role in creating that experience. What did that person do to get there? What was in their control? What was in their influence to be able to get there? And then the final layer of the good that you might find is how they can foster that feeling again in the future, or how they can recreate that experience.
Yeah.
And then we have just our general practice format that's underneath that. So first, it's just a high level overview of how we go about finding the good in our 10-minute question asking period. How to go about amplifying the good, so helping them the other person to kind of relive that experience and help them to see what was good for them, and then reflecting the good. And this is where we ask the question asker to share, what did you learn about the other person? So that way they can reflect back and over that 10-minute period of only asking questions, saying, hey, Brian, this is what I learned about you. This is how I learned you're resilient. This is how I learned what matters to you and what you value.
So I'm gonna do the stop share there. So we have the other stuff here. We have the best practices and the link to the article. And the only reason I'm stopping there is the purpose as we're doing this these videos with Bree and I. It's, for our members, they practice this and they use this outline each week. And while we could dive into that, I think what's more interesting, likely for all of us to talk about, is what's behind here, right? So as Bree was walking through each of those, I'm like biting my lip to go into there, because and so maybe that's where we'll start this. And so the question of the week outline, I think we'll probably put it somewhere where people can access it now, and you're welcome to use that to do the conversation. But I'm curious. So starting in there with this question, like Bree, when you think about that question, what's a challenge you overcame in the last month? Where do you see the connection between the science, and maybe we can talk about the science more and then come back, so it doesn't have to be very linear here, but the connection between the science here that you outlined, our resilience ability to adapt to difficult situations, stress, adversity, or trauma to strikes, that research, how is that related to the question from your standpoint?
So looking at this question, what's a challenge you overcame in the last month? How I view that question is that when we ask this question, it's in a hope to help that other person see what their skills are, what their strengths are, maybe areas where they grew a little bit. And the science that I found was on building resilience.
Mhm.
And resilience is where, per the Mayo Clinic, it's the ability to adapt to difficult situations.
Mhm.
So we can help people when we ask this question. We can help people see oof, that was a difficult challenge that you went through, but look at how you grew from that. Look at how you were able to develop new skills, or that you became stronger or more confident, or you recognized a value. I like this idea of being able to help someone else
Mhm.
become more resilient through just asking them a question of how did you deal with that challenge? Because also, how often are we asking people they tell us about a challenge they went through. Are we asking them, well, tell me how you overcame it? What are the skills that you used?
And I think that's the bit of when I just see that those two, and for those that, when I jumped away a little quick, if you actually look at the outline, and if you have this in front of you, the outline, and I'll just throw it up, throw it back on the screen real quick, throw it up real quick, throw it back on the screen real quick. There's an article that links, or there's a link down here on the bottom to the actual article itself. You could see it if my little deal wasn't in the way. But when you click on that article, I mean, to your point, Bree, what's important about a question like this, and as you identified, we talk about challenges, I think that some people don't, for sure, that's a level one, being able to talk to somebody about a challenge is quite important. But what happens is, because our brains have this negative bias, we talk about oh, this week was a pain in the neck, I'm glad I was over it.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's okay to share, right, there's nothing wrong with that. It's I mean, being able to at least have somebody we can share that to with is important. What happens is that we then tend to say, oh, so I hope that doesn't happen again, right? As opposed to when we ask this question of how did you get over it? Now we're getting into this part that your brain, the other person's brain, is going to have a hard time seeing, because the amplification, using our terminology, when I'm going through a challenge, my brain tends to focus on, and this is my brain, everybody's brain tends to focus on the threat, right? Oh, this was a pain in the neck, and I don't want to deal with that again, right? And what it then overlooks is, and here's how I got through it, and here's the strength I used, and here's how it felt when I got done.
Mm-hmm.
And those are important, because you're gonna have a challenge again.
Yep.
And
It'd be nice if we didn't, but
right, yeah, fair. Yeah. I don't know. Actually, the science says no. But I mean, we want to feel like that, right? And I think that idea of preparing, or resilience, is something we can prepare. And also, specifically, what it says is resilience isn't about just getting through something, or getting over it, or being able to put up with something. It's about and I think that when we identify, here's what I do well, here's what I got, how I got through it, here's how I got over it, what you're doing is clicking on two channels: confidence and tools.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hit the next challenge, do I feel confident that I can get over it? And do I feel like I have the tools to get over it? Well, if I leave the last challenge and just say, oh, I'm glad I don't have to do that again, I didn't pick up the tools, and I likely haven't reinforced confidence as much as I could. If somebody says, tell me how you did that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you got over that. Right. And so I think that's part of that that building of resilience. Yeah.
Well, and also how that person is going to feel the next time that they have to deal with a challenge. So when a challenge comes up again and they have only gone through that negative bias, that negative thought cycle, they're going to dread that challenge. Whereas if we can help someone see that they were able to succeed, that they do have the tools that are available to them, they're going to go into that challenge with a little bit more confidence. And it's funny because my husband and I have a saying with each other that literally we say this to each other every single day of like, you can do hard things.
Yeah.
And just regularly, like anything that we're experiencing. I'm thinking of two like particular moments of, we were going backcountry skiing, and I'm not a double black diamond kind of gal. I'm like a groomer kind of gal. And, and it was an epic powder day. And I'm standing on the edge of this like straight drop down. And he goes, you can do hard things. What's a hard thing you've done? And just like got me thinking about like, okay, I've done hard things before. I learned how to ski, period. Like, and he was like, okay, you can do hard things.
Yeah.
And we jumped off. It was like, we do that with each other regularly of recognizing that you can do hard things. And what are the skills that we have to be able to do those hard things so that we get excited in the future when there's a challenge. We might be scared, but we've got that reminder of I'm capable. I've got the tools.
Yeah. And I think what I heard in there, there's that, like, we always talk about, like, being able to connect to what you've done will help for whatever you're going to do. And I love that, like, you can do hard things, of like pulling your brain back into the neural connections, like the experiences, like, and that's what happens. We look at a hard thing and our brains are just not accessing those memories, which means they're not accessing the tools that we garnered, if you will, from those memories. And this, what's in that, and what is I think maybe for me the most important thing is that how someone close to you can help you do that so quickly, right? Like, again, we're sort of always like peppered into this idea of like, you need to create this resilience on your own, and sure, they're absolutely, you want to do that and you want to have the skills, and you can tell yourself like, yes, how do I get through this alone? But what when we jump into the article here, like the tips on improving resilience, the first tip is getting connected, building strong positive relationship. And so in that, like, what happens when your husband, when your partner asks you, or just says, in this case, like, you've been through hard things, is not just that you're going back to these memories so you can reuse the tools. It's that now your brain has been told unconsciously, and you don't have to do it alone. And that doesn't mean that the other person is going to do it for you, right? But it means that, like, what's happened in that interaction is your fear was validated. Right. And that's like a level of loneliness. If I'm here with this fear and I can't talk to anybody, that's going to trigger that, the symptomatic things that happen with loneliness. Your dorsal anterior, like your limbic system, your fight or flight system sort of activating, and just being like, you've been through hard things before. He told you this is hard. It's okay. Yeah. Right. It's okay that maybe you're a little nervous, a little anxious, but in just that interaction. And now I'm like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It's okay to be nervous about this. And somebody believes in me, which means they've seen my value, because I'm having a hard time seeing that right now on my own. Yeah. Right. And now in that connection, then we're able to access all of those other bits. But I hear that, like, as you describe that, like, how beneficial we can be for each other in that simple acknowledgement, like, you've been through hard things. Yeah. And another level of that, so in order to create that connection, and something that we're doing every week in our calls, is building trust. Because you can't, if that was a stranger that I was next to on the edge of this double black diamond, I would have been like, I don't know who the heck you are. Like, get out of here. Whereas, you've been through hard things. No, I haven't. I have a desk job. I'm at home. I'm like, I mean,
all the excuses in the world as to why I cannot do this.
Yeah.
But what we practice when we're asking these questions as the question asker is developing trust with the other person, of letting them know that we are there for them and that we hear them and that they can trust us because we genuinely care about them.
Yeah.
And that's such an important aspect for both parties as the question asker to, if I want to be a trusted confidant or partner or friend or colleague, it is, or teacher. Oh my, I'm thinking of all the different people we're working. If we want to be trusted, we need to hear people. And that's what we're doing in this process, is actively trying to hear people and to understand them.
And I can tell you that, like, for me, one of the 18 years, married to this saint who must have done something really bad in a former life to have to, but no, we used to joke about that, but it's actually what I found, that I had a really hard time learning. I'm quite frankly still learning, is I sort of came from the school, like, tough it up, just like push somebody out there. And while I still have that, like, I push Jamie into stuff she's not prepared for all the time, right? Like, just because I will always believe in her more than she believes in herself. And that's not a comment on her not believing in herself. It's just because we see other people, especially the people love, in a way that they can't see themselves. Like, there's just science behind that. But it took me a real long time, and I think I'm still kind of bringing it more into practice, how important validating is. And that, like, telling somebody that, like, yeah, that is tough. Like, it's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be afraid, does not take away from, you can do that and say, and you do it, I believe in you, you got it, because I think I used to approach it as, like, there's nothing to be scared about it. You just have to think differently. You're just, and just not like, and it came out as like, the hell's wrong with you? Like, why are you scared of anything? You're, and it would be, from my end, it was like, I'm trying to tell you, you're a badass and you can do all these things. What's coming out is like, what's wrong with you? Why are you scared? You're, and
Don't
that's
be scared. You shouldn't be feeling that way.
yeah. Yeah, you don't have to, you just have to, you have to choose not to worry, you have to choose not to be, and while that might even be intellectually correct in some weird way, it doesn't take care of, like, it doesn't help, right? And not nearly as quickly as, like, yeah, that's scary. That's cool. It's cool to be scared. And how are we going to do it? And I believe you can do it. And where have you done it before? Right. And I think that's that third one in these questions. That's where I get really excited. It's like, I don't have to do the telling, right? Like, I mean, even how your partner approached you on this, like, while he might have stated, you've been hard things before, like, when somebody says that and just leaves it, you're asking the question automatically. Wait, what? Where have
I done this?
Yeah.
And it's so cool because we do, we've talked about this before, of how our brain works. When you ask your brain questions, the reticular activating system does this really cool thing where it searches for answers to that question.
Yeah.
So, like, in a scary moment, you could ask someone, how have you overcome a similar experience? And their brain is going to search for an answer to that. And it's going to pull up those previous experiences. Really cool feature of the brain.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'm a fan of that one.
And again, it's another one of those, like, it's harder for us to ask ourselves questions that are going to really activate that piece. But when somebody we know who is authentically interested, who is leading with, curiosity, all the things we teach in the practice sessions, it's almost, you have to actively disengage your brain to not have it automatically search out those things, right? Like, it's, your brain can't not do it, using the double negative in there. And so, we start to leverage that science, like, then it's so much easier than to communicate. And I think this is maybe where it brings it home, likely on all of these for me, is as a man, communicating that I care about somebody, that I believe in them, it's never been easy. Like it's just never been a wasn't something I grew up learning how to do in the industries I've been in, right? Even though they're on the touchy-feely end, it's just not, it's not easy work. And so being able to put it in a question
Mhm.
and then click on that, like, I'm interested, and I don't have to worry so much about, like, I do still want to tell you I care and tell you I'm interested, but if I can show you,
Mm.
and I know now what to look for, and I know that just that interest and being able to do the follow-up questions, and that will make you feel it,
Mhm.
like, I can do that all day long. Like, and if it's uncomfortable, I'm cool with it, versus like trying to find the words to say, I care about you and you're awesome and you're great, in a way that doesn't just, like, I still work to say those things,
Right.
right? But what's more important is that the other person feels those things, right?
Mhm. And the way that they're going to feel that is by when you ask them those questions and you're interested in digging deeper. That is an incredible way to show someone that you care about them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think this may be in this a really good thing to sort of wrap this thing up on it. And it's something we tell people week in and week out. Like, and one of the reasons we're sharing the outline is, like, starting with a question, like, you almost can't go wrong, right? But then the intention behind it has to be there. Now it takes some work. There's a lot to do with it, but it's also not about the question, right? Like I can give somebody a list of questions all day long, but if it doesn't, and that's where again the practice comes in, and learning some of the skills, it's to be real authentically interested and engaged requires you to know what you're looking for. It's not about can I show somebody I'm engaged, which, like, a lot of that active listening feels like you have to act like you're engaged.
Right.
But if you are able to train your brain what to look for, if you don't, like, you're naturally engaged. And I think that's the trick. That's the hard thing to really be able to put into practice in real time, is that I'm going to ask you something that I am inherently, like, very curious about.
Right.
And then over time, learning that, holy cow, even if I've known this person for 20 years, I'm going to learn something new and cool that's going to be beneficial for both of us in this
Yep.
interaction if I do it right. Yeah.
Oh, totally. And also, I just want to, for anyone who's watching this and they're going to go and practice the question, it's going to be awkward at first if you're not used to this, and it's going to be hard. And you're going to be like, I don't know the next question to ask.
Mhm.
That's a normal thing. That's why we
Yeah.
do practice on a weekly
Yeah.
basis, is because this is a skill set that
Mhm.
gets developed.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, if you haven't been to the gym in a while and you go and lift weights for your first time, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and you're sore the next day. Brain
Same thing
works.
with the brain.
Your brain works the exact same way. If you haven't asked these questions before, you're exercising muscles that might have been dormant for a bit. So please don't feel like the question is going to be magic, or like the process is going to be magic. It's not. It's building new muscles. But I can tell you, and I think Bree would reinforce, and most of the people that have tried this, is like, you might be surprised at some of the strengths and skills you have in doing this, and specifically the ability to help the people around you see, acknowledge, and be confident in their own value. Because I don't know about everybody else, but, like, I can't think of very many things I want more for my friends, my family, my clients, and coworkers than them seeing and believing in their own value. Like, I can't, there's not a better gift I can provide, I don't think. And if I can influence that at all, like, it's worth a little effort. Yeah. Closing
Totally.
thoughts, Bree?
Oh,
We made it through.
we did it. I was so nervous.
How did you overcome this hard thing today?
I overcame this hard thing. You guys, I was nervous about being here. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I did
Yeah,
it, Brian.
we did it. We did it. Yeah, yeah. Nice. Yeah, nice work. And it was fun. I think we already knew, like, Like, I think when we run this as a podcast or video, for me, I've done different podcasts and stuff before, but like, where I've kind of fell off. It's like, well, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. So
Right.
maybe I'm a little selfish, but this was super fun.
It was
Bree,
fun.
like we're gonna do this weekly. Maybe we'll bring other people along to have some of these conversations and that as well. I hope everybody listening, watching, whichever the case, that you all find this valuable too. Feel free to reach out to us. Go to findinggood.com. Check out what we're doing. We invite you to any of the workshops. Transformational listening starts here in a week. We do keynotes all around the country. We have weekly practice sessions that Bree runs each and every week, and a ton of other stuff that we'd love to share with you as we help more and more people learn the tools of changing from transactional questions and transactional conversations into more transformational conversations that help people see their value, that help people kind of understand their worth and build connection and community, whether it's in a relationship, in a school, or an entire business culture. So thanks for hanging out. We made it, Bree. Nice
We
job.
did it.
All right.
Okay.
See y'all next week. All right. Let's see.